where it goes down, where you hear about the sports all around town. In the country, full of controversy to the highlights. You just not safe in the limelight.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another great episode of The Stoop, where we talk hoops, and more hoops. I'm your guy, TJ. Once again, The Stoop is always powered by Nuts and Bolts Sports. I want to give a shout out to my guy, Kev P. What's going on, Kev P?
As usual, it's a pleasure to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, listen, for me, this is a joy. This is like a bucket list interview. Words can't put into to how surreal this is. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have a 90s cultural icon. When we talk about Big East basketball, we're talking about the Lord of Reading, Pennsylvania, the king of the hill, a 15-year vet in the league, now a guy who's coaching, a guy whose career has been synonymous with just a three-pointer. Ladies and gentlemen, put some hands together for Mr. Donyell Marshall. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Donyell Marshall, for coming to the Stoop. We appreciate you this evening. We're going to jump right to it, Mr. Marshall. So first things first, when were you first exposed to the sport of basketball?
First of all, I'll say thanks for having me. I know we've been trying to do this for a while. Finally able to get around to it, so thanks for having me on the show.
Appreciate it.
You know, as far as basketball, I've been exposed to it my whole life. You know, probably about 4 or 5 years old. Grew up playing football, baseball, basketball. You know, honestly, a lot of people don't really believe this, but basketball actually was not my best sport. At a young age, I was probably better at football and baseball. But then, you know, when you grow 8 inches in 2 years, it's time to concentrate on one of the sports. And, you know, for me, it was basketball. It's kind of hard being a pitcher at 6'8". Lost my strike zone, and then, you know, wanted to move from quarterback to receiver. Didn't think I knew when I was quarterback, throwing it across the middle, getting receivers lit up and all that stuff. I don't think I was built for that anymore. So I stuck to basketball.
Okay. So with basketball being something you've been around your whole life, at what age did you think that you could do something with it? Was when you reached 6'8", or was a little bit further along?
Obviously, we all had that dream. You know, for me, growing up watching Dr. J, Maurice Cheeks, Moses Malone, you know, Bobby Jones, all those guys, you had that dream. You know, growing up in Glenside, never really knew if the dream was a reality. But, you know, one thing that had me always being able to have that dream was my uncle Lenny Moore. Played for the Baltimore Colts, went from Reading High, went to Penn State, played for the Baltimore Colts, was in the Hall of Fame. So always had a family member who made it. So it always had me thinking above and beyond. I was always a person who never really had a lot of confidence. You know, so, you know, even in 10th, 11th grade, when I was starting to get recruited, never really thought I was that good. Just thought that, you know, being 6'9", playing in Berks County basketball, that I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. It wasn't until I really went down to Philadelphia, started playing against those guys, that I started getting more confidence. Even when I went to UConn as an AllAmerican, first 2 weeks, I didn't think I was good enough. You know, everybody know the Big East back then was a very physical league. Anybody who knows me knows I was the same height, 6'9", but I was only 180 pounds, 185 pounds. So, you know, going against Alonzo Mourning and them dudes who were, you know, bigger, stronger, really took confidence away a little bit. But as it went along and I was still able to do some of the things, you know, by the end of my freshman year, I thought I'd be pretty good. Sophomore year, definitely thought I was good. My junior year, I knew I was good.
Okay.
You know, I just had a swag. My junior year at UConn that I just knew I was good. And that's when I finally realized that I had the chance to make it.
So I would like to touch on that really quick because in 93-94 season at UConn, the Big East is arguably at its best. You faced some pretty steep competition. Adrian Autry, you had Lawrence Moten, Kerry Kittles, John Wallace, Othello Harrington, just to name a few. And you went on to not only win Big East Player of the Year, but also Defensive Player of the Year. Share with us the locker room excitement for conference play, knowing that you were playing against the level of competition consistently in the conference.
Well, by the time we got the confidence, man, we got to understand is our sophomore year, we had 7 freshmen, 6 of us played a lot. And so our sophomore year, we were getting big minutes to where our junior year, we just like, we're 1 or 2 players away from being really good. And going into my junior year, I was on the USA national team. And I came back, I was the leading scorer, second leading rebounder. And like I said, that just made my confidence go out the roof because I was playing with some great guys and guys that I knew that were going to always be in the draft. And I'm like, if I'm the leading scorer of that, I know what I can do. And talk about the locker room, man, we had so much fun, so much confidence. You know, Ray Allen was a freshman on that team. He came in, was the second leading scorer. He really helped build us up. But if you guys remember, Tribe Called Quest came out, their CD that year, Midnight Marauders, and Award Tour was one of their first hits. And before every game, before we went out onto the court, we changed the lyrics from, you know, when their cities that they named on Award Tour, we named the teams in the Big East. That was our theme song. We named off every Big East team as we was going through, and we were 16-2 that year. At that point in time, it was the best Big East record ever, and that was our motto. It was just we was on the award tour, and we was just trying to, you know, show everybody what our talents were, and we were able to do that.
Speaking of the Big East, basketball has lost some Big East heavyweights recently. Unfortunately, we lost John Thompson and Cliff Robinson. Share with us the significance of Thompson's loss as both a rival and then, you know, now you being a coach, as well as Uncle Cliff's mentorship and competitiveness.
Well, Uncle Cliff, you know, he was at UConn before I was, but, you know, by the time I got to the NBA, he'd already played in the finals and this and that. And I think for him was just like, you know, Chris Smith had got drafted, Scott Burrell had got drafted, well, Tate George had got drafted also, and then, you know, I was a lottery pick, and I think for Uncle Cliffy was like, yo, UConn's about to be on the map, you know, we starting to get dudes in the league, this and that. He knew I played like him, so it was like a big-time mentor for me. You know, every time we saw each other, we talked. You know, he was always making sure I was okay, you know, making sure to be coachable and things like that. You know, when he got sick a couple of years ago, I was able to see him a couple of times and we were able to talk. And, you know, one of the things I didn't know, he was sick again. And, you know, so when I found out the news, that one hurt big time, you know, because a lot of us don't really have older brothers. I'm the oldest one in my family. And to lose somebody that you really considered a big brother, it actually hurt a lot. For John Thompson, you know, that one hurt, you know, growing up. It was Big East Mondays. It was always Georgetown, Syracuse. And for John Thompson to be the first black head coach to win a national championship, and then to be able to play against him. You know, I remember my junior year, they beat us all 4 times my freshman and sophomore year. My junior year, we beat them both times. After the second time we beat them, I remember his quote that I will always cherish and laugh at today. He said to the media asked him about me after the game, and his quote was, "I hope he leaves at the end of the year." And I thought that was, you know, big time.
That's an endorsement.
Praise for me, coming from somebody like him. And you know, you guys are from Reading. You probably know, all the Cooper family.
Yes.
Don Juan Cooper was a guy who, you know, did some stuff for me, and so he started working at Georgetown, and he was very close with John Thompson III, and to the point where, you know, he worked his Georgetown basketball camps. And so my kids all went to Georgetown basketball camp, even though it was a rivalry. We actually became friends just because of being friends with them. So I remember going down and seeing my kids a couple times, and, you know, Big John pulled me to the side one time and said, "Man, I don't know what you guys did to my son, but thanks for being a great friend to him." And, you know, so that also meant a lot to me as well, you know, and things. And just when you go back and read the stories, man, with him pulling the drug dealers to the side and telling them to stay away from his players and things like that, man. That's things that coaches don't do no more, man. It's just right. They scared. He wasn't scared of that. He wanted to let them know, these are my players, stay away from them. So we lost an icon, man, for especially with everything going on in the world today, and, you know, us black coaches that are trying to be successful, man. We lost somebody who was very, very instrumental in getting us to where we are today.
So you talked about the Cooper family, and, like, listen, man, I don't know if you understand how much of a cultural icon to the city you are. As a kid growing up in the 90s, you meant everything to me, my friends, everybody who just wanted to be like you growing up. Have you ever had an opportunity just to sit back and think about the significance and culturally what you meant to the city? And if so, what stands out in your mind about that time?
I do. And sometimes it could be difficult sitting up and really seeing what your true meaning to the city is. You know, as much as I love Reading, Pennsylvania, and that's where I'm from. You know, I have a tattoo on my arm for the coordinates of the house I grew up in, Glenside. I mean, that's how much it means to me, Glenside, and how much the city means to me. You know, I'll never forget where I came from, but I think sometimes it could be difficult because, you know, I'm a person who, when I gave back to the city, I gave back because I loved it. And, you know, I wasn't asking for praises. You didn't have my name in the newspaper. Hey, he did this, he gave back to this, he did that. So a lot of people didn't think that I gave back. And I think it was difficult when you hear people think that I didn't do anything for that city. And so sometimes you sit back and like, you know, as much as I love it, you really sit back and like, did the city really embrace you as much as you wanted them to embrace you and all that thing? And, you know, and I can sit back and, you know, I had an AAU program for 15 years. I mean, I put countless people in college basketball and the pros from Reading, and took them here and took them there where they would have never seen, you know, this and that. And, you know, used to do so many things, and that's not for me to talk about, but you know, the question you asked, I'm gonna answer it correctly. You know what I mean? And so it's like, as much as I feel like, you know, being an icon or being whatever for the city, sometimes it's difficult. And you say like, you know, does the city really love you as much as you love that city?
Well, let me do this before we continue on. Let me say thank you, Mr. Marshall. Thank you for what you did to revitalize Bear Park. Thank you for your camps at Albright. Thank you for the AAU program. All things such as people like myself and others are my colleagues and my friends and my homies we all benefited from. So thank you so much. We really appreciate all you've done for the city. And I know it's real. So we ain't going to continue on that. But thank you so much. Go ahead, Kev.
No,
Well, we're big on giving flowers here on the Stoop. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that. TJ just did that. And I'm going to do that and give you some flowers for what you've done for UConn. You weren't able to cut down nets, unfortunately, but you set off what would be an impressive run. Uncle Cliff kind of gave you credit for it as well. Did you know the impact that you would have on UConn when you became the first All-American to attend there?
Well, it's funny you say that, man. It's just like, you know, again, I was sold on the Big East. You know, it was Big East Mondays when we were young, Georgetown, Syracuse, Pitt. You know, you have Villanova down the street and stuff. So I was kind of sold on going to the Big East Conference. I remember Coach Chaney was at Temple, and he came to my house twice, and he finally put in the newspaper, it was like, if you're not from the Big East, you don't have a chance. And I think it was known that I wanted to go there. But it was funny because I wanted to go to Syracuse. I was sold on Syracuse. Billy Owens was there. You know, he was my idol. Even to, like, I remember on my visit, they had Billy Owens take me around. And Billy's like, yo, we can do this, we can do that. I was like, yo, Billy, cut the shit. I know you leaving at the end of the year. We ain't playing together.
That's a Carlisle guy, Central PA guy.
Like, you ain't got to lie to me on that. I know you ain't going to be here. You know what I mean? Like, you know, whatever. But I wanted to go. I wanted to go to Syracuse. But sometimes your mom knows what's right. You know, I was ready to commit. My mom ain't want me to commit, man. My mom ain't. She just has something in her that she just ain't like Syracuse. And so I remember getting the letters from Connecticut, and my Uncle Chuck, who passed away a couple years ago, I remember like I was going to throw the letter away. And I remember my Uncle Chuck telling me, man, he was like, yo, keep that letter. You can be the first. You can put that school on the map. So it just had me really thinking, you know, about like, yeah, that would be cool, like to be the first of, you know, all these major colleges and this and that, and to be the first. And, you know, when you look back on it, to know that you're the first high school All-American to go there. You're the first college All-American for them. You're the first person to ever go hardship and leave for the pros for them. You're the first person to be the offensive and defensive player of the year in the conference. I mean, it makes you smile. It makes you, you know, realize that you were, you know, like I said, I was never a person who was big confidence-wise on myself. But then when you sit back and think about it, you're like, damn, you were pretty good, you know? So it is something that I always remember. And, you know, coaching here in Connecticut, I get reminded of it a lot because the old heads that are around here, you know, they always say thank you and stuff. And you know, this is definitely has become my second home.
Very nice. Then you went on to professional basketball, of course. In your first 8 years in the league, you shared the court with 4 of the 50 greatest players of all time: Mullen, Malone, Stockton, and then Pippen later on. And then another 3 years playing the next generation's greatest with James and Durant. Of the guys of the 50 graders, who imparted the most wisdom upon you?
There's no doubt it's Malone and Stockton. The years before that, I was in Golden State. We were losing. That's what people. I remember the bad days. I tell them they can have Steph Curry and all that. These are great, but I was the days where you ain't even want to put us on TV. But when I got to Utah, those guys knew I was important to that team. And they taught me how to eat right. They taught me how to sleep right. They taught me how to lift weights. They taught me how to be a professional. Being in the NBA, you live the NBA life. In Golden State, you really wasn't winning. So you're doing some partying, you're hanging out, you're doing all those things, man. I got to Utah, I stopped the partying. I became a man. I stopped the partying. It was about playing the game of basketball. It was about trying to win. It was about trying to get to that championship. So I would definitely say Stockton and Malone really had the most wisdom on me to help me become a professional.
Okay, so paying it forward now, of the next generation, who would you say you imparted some of that wisdom upon, and whose raw talent wowed you more? Would that be Durant or James?
I only got to play 2 months with Kevin Durant. But I definitely think I had a big impact on him because when I got there were some things that was going on with the organization, and I stood up for them and being young guys and was able to, get him to see how, to be professional being older. At that time, I think I had a really good impact on LeBron. We were actually very close in Cleveland. Being a vet, being the older guy on the team and stuff like that, he really looked towards me doing a lot. At that point in time. Raw talent, you're probably going to go with Kevin Durant because of raw talent. Because by the time LeBron was so far ahead of his game, I don't know if he ever had raw. I think the last time LeBron had raw talent was third grade. I think after that, it's just all just gifted. He was, just to see
basketball savant.
Yeah, just to see him study the game. And I tell kids today, like, even my team is like, my team, only people they know in the NBA are LeBron, Anthony Davis, Kevin Durant, Kyrie. They don't know any of the subs. They don't know any of those guys. They don't know any history. And LeBron, he's, I think, 16 years younger than me, and he remembered my 360 dunk at UConn. And
one dunk.
So he's just a fan and student of the game. And so if you're asking the question on raw talent, you got to give it to Kevin Durant because he was still raw his rookie year, and I think when you look at Kevin Durant, his rookie year, we were on a losing bad Seattle team to where he was able to work on his raw talent because we were losing anyway. So it was about just getting him better. Whereas LeBron was trying to take his team from the number one pick straight to the top right from day one. And, you look at that where the talent and the steadiness of the game, LeBron was more mature than Kevin at that time in early stages of their career.
Okay. We've already touched on some of the great accolades and awards that you've already won, including your McDonald's All-American year in 1991, which I don't know if you noticed, if you're aware of it, but your year has the all-time winningest college percentage of all time. You being in there with Travis Best, who was synonymous with turning the Georgia Tech program around, Rick Brunson in his run with him, Aaron McKee, Eddie Jones at Temple, and Coach Chaney, yourself, and 4 out of the 5 members of the Fab Five had the greatest college winning percentages in coming out of college that year. But before even all that, like I said, you're the king of the hill. Your number is retired in the Geiger. Share with us some of those legendary battles, or maybe 1 or 2 memories from those Harrisburg times when you traveled up the Turnpike to play against those guys. And also, let's talk about that legendary time when you went up against Simon Gratz.
Well, obviously everybody talks about the main battle with us in Harrisburg.
Right.
We had we played each other the summer going into my senior year up in a summer league game. I think we almost fought that game because the cops was called to the youth game. Then we had the Christmas tournament where we beat them by 21, and then and we played the game, where they beat us in the district championship, with 3 refs from their conference refing the game. But, they beat us. It was cool. But we had, it was 3 good battles. It was really good. It was good to go against, another team and another player who was, built like you and played like you and brought the best out of you. It was funny because he went on to, he played Division II, I think, a little bit after that. Dan Bowie did. And he ended up being in the Golden State Warriors training camp the one year I was out there. And it was funny because, we sat and we shook hands and we laughed about it. And, it was probably one of them things where a lot of people think we hate each other and this and that, whatever. But, we laughed and joked about it. Another battle that I tell people about is probably when I was in 11th grade when we battled Wilson 3 times that year, going against Kerry Collins, things like that. We had a bench clearing brawl at Wilson. Cutting across the lane was called that word that you don't call us. And, I don't know if you guys know who Brian Wright is.
Yes, I do.
He went ballistic on him. He was like my protector in high school and stuff. So, we had some good battles with them, and we had some good battles with Glenn Mills as well. So it was we had some good battles in high school, some really good memories. I think I have about 6 or 7 games on DVD that I pull out once in a while, watch. I showed my kids, and we just have some fun watching those games.
Let me continue on with that. Who is one of the unsung guys you may be thinking about from your Reading teams or just even in the Reading area that, just always stuck out in your mind, either growing up, watching or playing with? And then the same thing, who was an unsung guy that you might have played with at UConn?
It was crazy because my first Reading High game was my own. I never went to Reading High basketball games or football games or anything before that. Half I was, again, living in Glenside. My mom didn't have a car, so just never went to games. So I can't really say who I actually even watched before me to even say who was unsung. As I got older and played with guys like that, one of the guys that I loved and wish I would have had a chance to play with was Charlie Chisholm from the '83 team. I definitely think he's one of the best point guards that ever played up there. I love the way he played and his competitiveness and things like that. As far as my team, one of the unsung heroes was my cousin, Fats Burdine. I think if we'd have been able to, he only played our senior year. If he'd have played with us 10th and 11th grade, I think we'd have had really, as good as our 3 years in high school was, I think if he'd have played with us in 10th and 11th grade, I think he would have been that much better. He kind of took those 2 years off, and, I kind of begged him to come out our senior year, and he came out and played, and I think he was definitely a difference maker for us senior year. At UConn, I don't know who the unsung hero is. It's just because we were all, you got to understand is most of us from that team as freshmen, we were all the player of the years in the state that we played in. I think when you come back and look at it, the unsung hero probably would be Kevin Ollie.
That was my bad.
By the time we got our junior year and he was a starting point guard, I used to just say to him, yo, man, I just need you to make one jump shot. You make one jump shot during the game, because then they couldn't double team me, but they would sag off of him and they would whatever. And, by his junior year, he was knocking that jump shot down consistently to where it opened up the floor for me, our junior year. And then you go on is like coming into our freshman year, he probably was the least offensively talented guy. But to come back and play 13 years in the NBA, it shows you his work ethic and how he was, and then come back and win a national championship at UConn as a coach, things like that. So, if I had to pick one guy, really the unsung hero, I would say Kevin Ollie.
Real quick, Mr. Marshall, before I swing it back to Kev, you were featured in Street and Smith and so many publications, McDonald's once again, and you made UConn your choice, and you kind of alluded to some of the other schools that you were interested in, whether you had the choice to do it again now, or would you stick to maybe potentially thinking about Syracuse or Temple or somewhere else? But if you had to think about it again, would it still be UConn?
It's funny you say that, man, because you know, Kansas was on my list, Kentucky was on my list, North Carolina, you know, a lot of teams like that were on my list and stuff. And it was funny because when I was at Ryder coaching, we played at Kansas. And I remember taking Kansas off of my list to go visit. But when we played at Kansas, I turned to this, we took a tour. We practiced there, we took a tour. And then I turned to the assistant coach and I was like, man, UConn better be lucky that I never took a visit here to Kansas, because I think I might have ended up taking Kansas over UConn at that point in time. But, you know, it's hard to say, though, because as much as I sit back and sometimes I say, man, I wonder what it would have been like if I would have actually went to Syracuse. Obviously, I came back and I made the right choice. I mean, I played 15 years in the NBA and you know, ended up getting Player of the Year and things like that and stuff. So it ended up being the right choice. But you do have times, because there's times I do sit back and look, you know, I was the only person who left, you know, that team from going to the NBA. And I sit back sometimes, if I would have stayed my senior year where we had won the national championship, they went to the Final Eight without me. You know, and I sit back and say, okay, would the chemistry have been different where we maybe don't go to the Final Eight, or would it have been that much better? Would I have been the person to get us over the hump, and would have been the first national championship?
Yeah.
So I have a question for you, sir. In previous episodes, we've talked about the change of the traditional big man. From the 4 position, you helped usher in the stretch 4. I credit Sam Perkins, yourself, and a little bit later, Rasheed Wallace, and then the floodgates opened. Tell us how that became such an important part of your game.
Well, it's funny because it's just an argument that I always get into, because it's like people remember me late in the career and they think that's like all I did was shoot threes. And I let them know that actually when I came into the league, I actually was a starting 3-man, and that I went inside, outside, and this and that. Kind of how it evolved was I got old. I got smarter. I got slower. And so where it really evolved is when I was in Toronto, when I got traded to Toronto, the funny part about it is, ironically, just like my 3-point record was against the Sixers, ironically, when I was in Toronto, when I got traded, we were playing the Sixers. It was Chris Bosh's rookie year. And we were probably playing small ball. Chris Bosh was playing the 5. I was at the 4. Vince Carter was at the 3. Jalen Rose was at the 2. Alvin Williams was at the 1. We posted up Vince Carter a lot. And so since we posted up our 3-man, your next 2 spots are your 4 and 5. Well, Chris Bosh was more inside guy at that point in time. So we pretty much had to spread the floor. I don't know if you remember Michael Curry.
Yes.
He was on the team at the time. He actually went to the head coach at that time. We were playing the Sixers, and told them to put me at the top of the key, because if my man doubled Vince, I could shoot the 3. Well, I ended up hitting 6 or 7 threes that game. And from that game on, the rest of the year, our offense was, because we were posting up Vince Carter, was pretty much spread me out on the floor so I could help spread the floor out. And I would say from that game on is when I became known as a stretch 4, you know, pretty much setting pick and rolls and pick and popping. And honestly, even though I had a contract for a long time and whatever, like I said, I was getting older. And I think it actually helped me play a lot longer because of, you know, just picking and popping and making other defenses have to read and things like that. And I think it was, you know, it was something that I didn't know that I was going to be a part of the first part. Because like you said, I always say Sam Perkins, Detlef Schrempf, you know, guys like that probably started it before me. But I think that because they were older, a lot of people remember me first. Even Derek Coleman was doing it, you know, when he first came out.
So, again, you and the late, great Kobe Bryant, rest in peace, shared the record for the threes in the game for a number of years. You guys accomplished that feat long before it was in vogue to put up double-digit attempts from beyond the arc. I thought at that time that the record was fairly secure. Do you recall when you saw the shift in league play and thinking that it was only a matter of time before that record fell?
Well, I think for me, it was